Testing volume, blah blah blah, testing volume. Can you hear me? And stuff. Blah blah blah, can you hear me? Testing, blah blah blah. Blah blah blah, can you hear me? Testing, blah blah blah. Testing, can you hear me, etc. Testing, can you hear me, etc. Testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I'm trying to get some music set up, and it's not working. Okay, let's try this. Nope, still not working. Oh wait, nope, it's totally working. It's just really quiet. Real quiet. I just need to figure out a way to amplify that. Okay, I think I might have done it. So let me test talking and see if I can actually hear my voice with some music that isn't too soft. Okay, I think I might have done it. So let me test talking and see if I can actually hear my voice with some music that isn't too soft. And nope, that totally didn't work. Nope, that totally didn't work. Okay. Alright, I will do my best to pay attention to the comments and stuff. I have them in a position where I can actually see them. Alright, so I'll just go over what I'm doing right now. Let's see. Let's get this out of the way. Alright, so this is what I have so far for this level of the dungeon I'm working on. This is the last project I'm going to make for Creation Kit, and then I'll move on to some other game. Player starts out in this ruined-like area, and basically what they're doing is they're going through a series of trials. And they're elemental trials that are to prepare the player for when they actually get to the dungeon proper, which is a plane of oblivion that's got all these elemental threats. So this unseen deity is going to introduce the player to these different threats to see if they're worthy to take on, the main dungeon. So first area is going to be inhabited by flame Atronachs, so to convey that that habitability, the temperature increases, you get some freaky shit coming out of the walls, fire and chains and stuff to introduce the concept of heat to the player and get them prepared for the environment that will be believable for these flame Atronachs to live in. Because the whole idea with this area is that there are three visual concepts I'm trying to instill in each room. And those concepts are that they should contain some kind of freaky shit, because as you go deeper in this dungeon, you're getting closer to this plane of oblivion. Oblivion is basically kind of like hell in this game. So reality should be tearing away in some fashion. Hence the abstract pillars coming out everywhere, chains and stuff. Something should be weird or not quite right. The second concept I go with, it should be some kind of, obviously, an elemental theme. So we got fire, we got frost, icy environment, and then we got some electricity shit going on over here I'll get into later. And the third theme I'm going for is nobility, kind of, or regality. Basically, this deity, you're stepping into his home, and if you're doing that, he wants his home to be nice and neat as well as he would want it to be for a Daedric prince, basically a lord of hell. So it looks like an area that maybe was built or used for worship for this deity. So it's not just a bunch of caves with lava dripping from the ceiling. That would look cool, and it would be believable for these Atronachs to live in, but it wouldn't look specifically like it was the abode of a royal deity. So those are the three concepts I go for each of these rooms. So we got the fire. We have a transition between fire theme and an ice theme, so the temperature drops as you go down this hallway. Got some various effects that I'll get into later, but basically, I've been working on screenshots. Because if you think about it, the player is going from first person usually, and they're walking around, and every once in a while they stop near a landmark, such as this dripping fire thing from the ceiling, and just like looking through the lens of a camera, you can see different points of interest from different areas of the dungeon. So this is a linear dungeon. It's basically one giant hallway, the whole thing, one linear hallway. So at each point, I want them to be able to look forward and backward and see interesting things. So from this point right here, if you're standing underneath this fiery thing, I don't know why anybody would do that, but people are gonna. You look down and you see the transition between fire and ice. You see the icicles, the heat dissipating in the form of lighting, the burning embers, the ice piling up and the mist, just stuff like that. And then you go into this icy section proper, and then we have the second big area. It's inhabited by one single Frost Atronach he hits like a truck, and he's meant to be kind of like a mini boss, I guess. Go through this area. Again, those three concepts. Basically, there should be some kind of freaky shit, so I tried to encompass that with the lights in the room. They're kind of shimmering and otherworldly, and it gives a cool look to the textures in the ice. This is an old game, so you gotta make it look pretty and cool to the best of your ability. The second thing is this is raised dais, I think it's pronounced. Platform, I guess. The pillars, the lights and stuff coming out of them, it all looks fancy and like it could have been used for worship or something like that. Something man-made, not natural necessarily. And then, of course, you have the elemental theme of ice. So, moving forward, this was weird. It took me a long time to do. How do I do a transition from ice to electric theme? Because the other type of Atronach is the Storm Atronach. So, I've thought of melting ice and what you do with that. So, it's conductive. So, the ice melts. You have a giant pool of water that you splash through. I also try to make things get a little bit more weird, more like dimensions ripping apart. You're getting deeper in the dungeon, and you are getting closer to hell, because everything descends. Like, there's always ramps down. I don't think there's any ramps up. So I want the player to be subtly influenced in the idea that they're getting deeper and deeper into something. So, got a lot of water. You have the structure right here, which I wanted to beat over the player's head that gravity is a thing. The water is falling down. You're splashing through it. And you're starting to introduce the concept of lightning. You can't see it because you're not in game, but behind these misty, weird-looking walls, it looks like dimensional rips. You can kind of see the texture behind the mist. It's very strange looking. It looks cooler in-game, but there is lightning behind the grill right here. And it's just kind of like, it looks like a miniature storm right behind the wall. You can't touch. But I think it interacts well with the water theme. And as you go down, again, with the screenshotting in the player's mind, you stop at this landmark right here, and you look down at where you're about to go, and you see a ton of lightning going on behind these grills. Like, the lightning is intensifying, and gravity is starting to do weird, fucked up shit. So you got the water that's floating up. You got these little floating pebbles. And as you go deeper, that intensifies until you get to this section right here, which is basically another one of these, piles of rocks with water, except the gravity is totally reversed. And I want to cement in the player's mind that they are not in Kansas anymore. So there's a lot of lightning behind this grill. I could go in game, I guess, but I don't know how that'll work with my streaming. I'd probably have to set up a separate window, and I don't want to get into that. So just pretend that there's lots of lightning and storms and shit. Also in this hallway, same thing. There's a lot of electricity arcing between these two pillars. It's purely for visual effect, although if you do stand in between it, I guess you'll die. but it's basically just to cement the electricity theme. So let's take out this door, and then next thing you go through, and as the player, you look up at this huge structure, and it's machinery. It looks completely man-made. Got some of the visual themes that we used for, like it was made for a purpose, for like worship, or specifically built to see who's worthy to fulfill this demigod's mission. Which, in the player's mind, the way the story goes in this dungeon is that you're enticed by treasure, basically. The Daedric Prince Periite, this deity, he doesn't tell you everything right up front. He's kind of like a trickster. He's like, you want shiny shit? You want to get rich? Go in this dungeon and see if you're worthy to get rich. And so you as the player just go through and you pick up some pieces of info along the way. But basically, he tricks you into doing his dirty work, which you get to later. But anyway, you go through all these structures that have man-made elements to them that are meant to prepare you for the mission itself, which is to go into Oblivion itself and stop a revolt. Anyway, there's a lot more lightning. The clouds have lightning. This is basically why I made the short fly-through video on my Facebook page. Or no, it's also on my YouTube too. It's because there's a lot of animated stuff in this level that doesn't show up unless you're in-game. So there's some encounters along these outer areas. When you get close, like you get to up the stairs right here, lightning spawns and it spawns the storm at your neck, and it'll path down toward you, but it is kind of an optional fight. I guess you could run past it if you want to, but same thing happens over here. But once you get to the top, basically non-optional fight happens. One spawns right in front of you, and pretty much have to fight it. Okay, and so after this last elemental area, you're finally ready to take the plunge, literally. So this is what I'm going to be working on for the next hour. I've got the basic structure of this downward spiraling hallway, and then you get to this room that will have some treasure in it, and then you have no way forward but to jump down this enormous long pit. It goes all the way down. It looks ridiculously long, but given how fast characters fall in Skyrim, it has to be this long for you to have a big enough transition between reality up here and actual Oblivion down here. And the way you do that without tons of scripts and things that can possibly break the game or otherwise not let you put it on the, I think, Xbox like mod database, you have to use visual language to convey what you want to do. So I've got this little room built here. It's a placeholder. It needs a light source so it doesn't hurt my eyes. So let me grab a light source real quick. Okay, that's better. This room, I'm going to make it look pretty helly, and you'll immediately notice that you're not in Nirn, the world of Skyrim, anymore. You're in Oblivion. So the way you do that is purely through visual language. Can't use scripts. I can't make a quest marker appear. I can't do dialogue. I can't add my own voice to the game. Can't do any of that. It's all got to be with just as much unique visual language as you can that'll convey to the player through showing rather than telling where they are. So if I get time, I'll build out this room more. This is going to be kind of like an antechamber that you'll exit, and then you'll be in Oblivion proper, which is just a big landmass with a bunch of, stuff that you'd recognize from playing Oblivion, the last Elder Scrolls game. But for now, I'm going to be working on this upper area. You need to transition between the storm theme to just reality breaking apart. So we've got this set piece right here. A common visual element is the floating rocks dealio. Basically, how do you convey reality breaking apart? You need to break the laws of physics in a way that doesn't look like just a glitch in the game, but looks cool and is functional in some way. Like it won't break, and it'll tell the player that they're going somewhere that they shouldn't be, but not because of the game rules. Because they genuinely feel like they're infiltrating a secret area or someplace that is off the beaten path. This place is definitely off the beaten path. So, floating rocks. I think I got some dust here. Let's turn off the markers, and it looks all right. This is just this placeholder that I put here to be a proof of concept, to make sure that in my mind it will actually translate to in the game pretty well. It'll look like what's in my head, and it pretty much does, despite this odd flickering I'm getting. So, let's turn those off. And let's see, let me go and get my notebook. Be right back. Alright. So I draw concepts all the time. You don't have to be a good artist to do concept art. I highly recommend doing so. Even not for just game design, but if you do web design or anything like that. It's really helpful to do this, because it helps you organize your thoughts, and it helps you keep a consistent... There's an end to that sentence somewhere. Helps you keep consistency in what you do. There we go. So let's see here. Today Alright. I roughly mapped out the lighting that's going to be in this pit. So we have this default basic purple lighting. I use the purple lighting whenever the player gets close to warp in reality. But since that is the basic theme of this last chunk of the level, can't all be purple. You got to have some variation in there. So only the most important elements of weird shit will be purple, like this pit. To start off will be purple. Then we're going to have it be dim. We're going to have some basic greenish yellow lighting. It's a little unnatural, but it highlights the man-made elements in the texture pretty well. And it doesn't look too out of place. And what this is going to do is it's going to be smoke. As a player, you look down and you got all this weirdness above you, but you look down and it looks just like smoke. That's the idea here. It looks like something that you could feasibly jump down and maybe live, because in order to facilitate the transition between Nirn and Oblivion, there's going to be a lot of fire and lightning and shit going on down here. Kind of like if you played World of Warcraft in the past year or so. The way they did Karazhan, when you get to the part of the dungeon where you shrink, your whole party shrinks, you go down this giant pit, and it's like a minute long that you fall. And although it looks like your character is shrinking and everything, the world is actually just getting bigger. But it's a really cool effect, and it's all from just going down what is basically a giant tunnel. If you look at that level from a developer's point of view, like in their editing tools, it looks pretty much just like this. It's a giant ass tunnel. So I'm creating that on a smaller scale. It's not going to be as complex, but it's going to be driven by visual effects, and that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing today. So, seeing as this is the main set piece of this area, it makes sense to just go for it first and then build out around it. You see, when I did the rest of this level, I built these big rooms first and then did the transitions later, because the transitions are not as important in terms of emotional impact as the set pieces themselves. As a player, you want to enter this doorway right here, look up this giant, huge thing, and then let that be the main emotional drive forward. You want to see what's on top. You want to explore this thing. You want to be like, wow, that thing is freaking huge and cool looking. You want to do something like that. You want to have an emotion and then create that using as visual effects, and just make this the climax of this particular area of the dungeon. Pacing's also important too, but that's a whole nother ballgame. Anyway. So yeah, built the big portions first and then did the transitions later. Because the transitions, they're important too, going from falling tension to rising tension to getting to your climax, which is, you know, these individual big rooms. But they're the thing that you want to make first so that you can make the rest make sense around it. That's the point I'm getting to. So let's go back to this. So to start, let's get the lighting color right, because a lot of these effects that I'm going to be using, you set up their emittance using the color of the light. Like for example, this dust right here, its emittance is set to the purple tone. So if I change the emittance to none, or like the default, it's just like this hazy gray, which may or may not complement the purple. In this case, I don't think it does. I'd rather just be the same purple. So we've got this smoke. You want to examine what the player sees at all points. So you look down, and you can see pretty much all the way down there to the very bottom. You can actually see the texture of the floor at the bottom. So we don't want that. We want to be pretty hazy. We don't want to sell its depth. So we need a lot of smoke. So let's grab us a smoke ring. And we want it to be not this wispy type of smoke, but let's make it a hazy. I think there's actually one that's called smoky. This mist right here is not thick enough. So let's go with what it actually says. Mist low smoky. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it's pretty good. Now the thing is, the purple lighting stems from this area. We want to change this smoke's emittance to, I think, none. We'll see how that looks. Because we're done using the purple color scheme at the top, or at least we want to transition it. So the blue doesn't look quite right. So let's go with a white. Yeah, this dark, hazy gray works. And we may have to stack several of them on top of each other. Change the elevation slightly. Okay, so you look down. I really wish this flickering problem didn't happen, but it seems to only happen when I stream, which is really weird because I mean, they're two different programs. Anyway, but even with the flickering, you still get the gist of what it should look like. Now, the interesting thing is, it's difficult to see where the fog is because the fog doesn't show in the creation kit. Here, I turned the sky off. There we go. We're actually just gonna have to do a test, so let's do that. Let's boot this shit up and see if it works on stream. Anyway, the fog doesn't show in the creation kit. What the fog is it's if you're looking off in the distance, it's literally just where your vision ends. It doesn't just cut off abruptly. It's got a start point and end point, and how the fade strength interacts between these 2 points. So I think I have it set pretty far. We'll see how far. And while I won't be able to see in the editor, I can at least get a gist for it and then approximate. So here's what we got here. Making sure the ceiling looks good. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to tell where seams are and stuff in the creation kit, and you got to kind of just look in the game. Okay, so let's turn off collision. Yep, fog is really far. You can basically see all the way down to the bottom, just barely. So we're going to need a lot thicker fog, at least in this area. So yeah, you can basically see all the way across. So I'll have to fix that, because that shouldn't be. The lighting is set up correctly so that the ambient directional lighting is lit on the bottom and dark at the top, it it should be the opposite for this pit. It should be lit at the top and dark at the bottom. But you can't do that in the same cell. And I'd like to avoid having a load door just for this one room, because there's going to be a load door down at the bottom there. And the the ambient lighting of Oblivion itself, the big landmass I'm going to build, is going to be completely different from this little shitty room that you're going to spend about 10 seconds in. So if anything looks weird, this is going to have to look weird, but we can make it work with a lot of fog and visual effects to obscure the line of sight. So while I'm at it, maybe I'll just show off the lightning thing. Whee! Move fast. To save resources, I turned off a lot of the lightning effects and stuff until you reach a certain point. Turn collision off. Oh, can't see the game. Thanks. Okay. Game capture. All right. There we go. There I am. Okay. I think. Alright. It'll take a while for this to catch up, but you should be able to see it. Alright. It caught up on my end with the preview of the stream, so now I can actually see myself. So it appears to be working now. So that's what all that looks like. Looks a little different in game, doesn't it? And I guess you could just stand in it. I have God mode on though, because who knows what's going to accidentally kill you when you're busy making stuff. That's the sky. Alright, so we have object fade in set up, because this wall just showed up out of nowhere. But the actual fog is so far that it doesn't serve its purpose. So that's something to fix. Or at least, if I want to keep everything visible in the huge rooms that I built, I can keep the fog set to as far as it is, and then use visual effects to mask the depth of this. So, let's intentionally crash the game out of it, because crashing the game takes less time than closing it out normally. Alright, so got these spastastic fogs right here, and we're going to mess with these a little bit. Oh man, I'm watching the stream right now, and man, the frame rate is not great when I'm in game. something to look at. I'm very new to all this streaming thing, so forgive me if there's weird stuff or ubiquitous black screens. Okay, so in order to place these correctly and rotate them if need be, let's turn all the snapping off so I can just move them like pixel by pixel. So we got these smoky effects that are not at all dark enough. So, see, they're not thick enough. So we're going to experiment, because a lot of this is trial and error. We have a third fog right here. Let's cycle through some of these. I'm trying to find one that's thick and serves its purpose. Swirls will not work. Wet will not work, because it's just a very fine mist. It's cool looking, but not what we need. Let's look in the database and see if there's any other mists than mist low. Nope, they're all low mist. Alright, so we're going to have a lot of layers of smoke. Let's try changing the emittance to something really dark, though, and see how that helps. So we have this dark blue right here. Nope, it doesn't necessarily make it obscure anything, it just makes the mist itself almost invisible. It makes it show up against the gray, but that's about it. So we turn on the sky and we can see, you know, what it would actually look like a little easier against the contrast of the skybox, and it doesn't look better. So let's go back. This is interesting. Probably just gonna have to change the fog. See, I wish there were a way to change the fog in a certain room or a certain like multi-bound area. Like let's see. You can add a script to change the camera effects in this particular giant red box. It makes it so that there's a snowflake effect, you know, stuff like that. Embers in this area. There's a way to okay, I wish there were a way to change the image space or the fog, the natural fog of an area. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working in Creation Kit. Like you can't see what it looks like. So, due to the nature of this particular project and having to do so much trial and error going back and forth between game and Creation Kit to mess with the fog and everything, I'm going to save this for off stream. If at all possible, like, okay, building something in Creation Kit is not exactly the most exciting thing ever. Or, okay, watching someone build in Creation Kit, not very exciting. So I do try and save the incredibly boring, tedious stuff for when I'm on my own time and I'm not, people aren't watching this. So let's go back and do something more fun. So we need to add lightning and then phase out that lightning and add weird shit. And by weird shit, it's going to be purple lighting with floating rocks and stuff. Because so far that is the main visual element that I have to convey to the player that reality is doing weird stuff. I have an idea. I could make these pillars kind of look like little celestial bodies, have some rocks, floating rocks around the pillars, and then have a dust cloud around it, kind of like an asteroid belt a little bit. So let's do a proof of concept, slap some stuff down, and see how it looks. So we need to disable the dust. We need to gather some rocks. Select all these. It's really easy to copy and paste this to create a nice little visual effect because you can resize and rotate the rocks as much as you want and then just copy paste it to, it's almost like creating a particle effect, really. I do like to hand edit every single little detail of my levels, but at this stage of development, what it is I'm just doing rough passes to make sure that things look okay. translating from in my head to in the game. So you have these rocks right here. Let's create some more. Rotate them a little bit for some variety. Look at it from different angles and see how it looks. You just need to move in a little bit. That looks good. Rotate them a little bit more. Okay. So we have big rocks toward the center. And then we have smaller rocks on the outer edges. So let's move the big rocks in closer, making sure that they look okay from all angles, especially from, again, the screenshotting concept. Players coming down from this area, what are they going to see? You need to see this. So make sure that these rocks are rotated enough so that there's some variety in what they look like. Okay, and now we're going to add basically particles. So you copy all these bigger rocks that are all in a similar area. Copy, paste, move them, and then you resize them all. Then select the ones that are too big, resize those, rotate, and it looks pretty cool, right? Select these bigger rocks. Oops. Size them down, rotate, size them down more. Any of the rocks that are farther away from the pillar, you want to make them smaller. It's almost as if the pillar were exploding and then time stopped. You know what I mean? It looks like a frozen in time visual effect all its own. And then what's missing is the dust. So let's grab me some dust. Whenever possible, you want to grab what's already in your level rather than going through the incredibly onerous menu object window where if you accidentally type in a single letter and like you're wondering how to spell a word, you type in the first letter of it. Oh, oops, it's searching the entire game catalog of every single file that starts with the letter, I don't know, F. And you're sitting there for like a full minute. Something that's, speaking from experience, is frustrating, even if it is my mistake. So, smoke. These things flow in different directions. This swirls looks really good because it kind of, even though it's coming from the bottom up, the way that it looks, it kind of makes it look like it's coalescing around something. So this works pretty well. Let's change the emittance to purple. It's just so it blends in a little bit. And then we're going to rotate it. And experiment with different sizes of what this looks like. So let's move that up, turn it off so we can see. Doesn't look too bad. Just a nice little prop that you see. I'd like to think of some more ideas on how to convey the reality warping thing rather than just floating rocks, because, well, I think it's a really cool looking effect and it's kind of unique. I don't really see that in other levels that I've played. It's going to lose its impact, you know? The first time you see it in a set piece setting, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you see it for like the 8th time and it doesn't work so well. So, if anything, even though these look neat and they serve their purpose, I'm considering them placeholders because I'm going to replace these effects with something that's a little more unique to the area. So, perhaps I'll end up scrapping the idea right here. Instead of having floating rocks, I'll do something more electricity themed, or, you know, play with the water a little bit more and skip the floating rocks because they're redundant. And instead, I'll save them for when they can be the unique visual tool of this one area and kind of make the area unique rather than just, oh, the third hallway that has floating rocks. You know, it's one of those things that maybe you don't think about all the time actively, but have you ever played a game and you go through the same level or the same character animation happens. Like Dragon Age 2, a lot of the levels were the same. They had the same layout. World of Warcraft, a lot of the character models use the same skeleton system. So you have like hilariously different characters that use the same rigging, I guess. I don't know that much about animation, but it's the same bones. So you have like the Lich King, the ultimate badass, and then you have like an animal or a critter or like some kind of low level monster that happens to have the same skeletal structure. So, or again in WoW, like a lot of the questing areas, the caves and stuff, even though they may have different textures and stuff, same exact layout. From Wailing Caverns, level 12 dungeon, all the way to, what are we up to? Level 115, 110? So, try and, at least as far as this game goes, that gives me so much flexibility in making things look different in different areas. I try and not run into that problem whenever I can. Because this floating rocks thing, it's cool, but it's also laziness. So I'm trying to save it for when it would actually matter. So let's focus on some other effects now that I've rambled on about this for enough. Hi, Nick. Alright, so let's make some lightning. Lightning is kind of boring to make in Creation Kit because you can't see it. You can only see where it's supposed to come from and the path it takes. The reason for that is because they come from a trap shooter. There is no lightning effect that you can just place down in a level and it works. Absolutely none. There are some sparks that you can make lighting do funky things like this, but there's no lightning. You have to use traps that fire continuously and then make the spell that the trap fires a lightning bolt. You gotta do some funky ass workarounds to get stuff to work correctly. So we have this this hallway right here where, hang on, let me disable this mist so you can actually see. No, I don't want to disable the hallway, I want to disable the mist. Anyway, this hallway has a bunch of lightning arcing between the pillars. This is to introduce the player to lightning, but I feel like we've already done that with the lightning behind these grates, the lightning in these cubicles too, so I don't really need it here. Going back to the concept of saving your best moments for unique areas, let's take these out and move them over to this right here, because that way we can clearly convey the theme of lightning and it dissipating. We're going to have a lot of lightning arcing from the ceiling in this area, and as you move down, there's going to be a few arcing bolts around these pillars, and then you move down further and it stops. Maybe a couple bolts here and there, but it's going to be an emotional transition between these two elements, because basically the emotion you go for lightning in this area is something erratic, bombastic, unpredictable, unstable. In the previous two areas, you can see the enemy before you get to it. In this room, the enemies appear out of nowhere. They just, boom, big lightning bolt, and there's suddenly an enemy there. Especially at the top here, you get ambushed by a spawn. So, you want to create falling tension. By doing that, or to do that, you have the same elements that you're used to in this previous room, add the lightning, and then you simply phase it out for a different emotion altogether, which is this purple kind of mystique, curiosity, trepidation type of thing. That's what I'm going for. So, let's do some traps. Traps are a lot of fun in Skyrim. As wonky as it is to create a lightning visual effect by using traps, it is kind of neat because it gives you a lot of power in what you want things to look like. Making sure that I'm selecting all the right things here. because I guess I could have any spell that I wanted to shoot out of a trap shooter and use that as a visual effect. Like there are some default options, like you have fire bolts, because here's what they look like. Um, it's these things right here. If you played Skyrim, it's these little things that stick out of walls and shoot spears and fire bolts and stuff. There's fire bolts, there's lightning bolts, there's ice storms, there's icicles, there's all sorts of stuff you can do with these. And one thing that Skyrim does kind of well is that you can create your own spells without scripts or anything like that. You can create your own spells. Explosions, visual effects. There's a whole bunch of art files in the game that can be manipulated in different ways to look completely unique without breaking the game, needing any coding knowledge, any artistic knowledge, and no scripts whatsoever. So, trap shooters are one of the ways that you can use that power to create your own effects if they're not already in the game. Lightning. So, the orange is the path that the lightning bolt takes. It's not the spark spell where it's like a continuous bolt of lightning. It's just a boom, one and done bolt. So I set these up to be rapid firing, increase the firing rate by 2 or 3 times, and added them on random turn on points. So they're all out of sync with one another. So it's not just like 5 bolts going boom, pause, boom. You know, it's like kind of erratic. So you just make sure that the paths that they take are correct. I think they're all facing exactly straight. Yeah, they are. It's kind of hard to tell. Well, here we go. Yeah, they're all more or less straight forwarding firing, so they're not going to hit the player as they go in. You want to avoid doing stuff like that. Bethesda has something called a sandwich rule. The sandwich rule is whenever a player enters a new area, like a door or a loading screen or anything like that, you want them to be able to get up, go make a sandwich, come back in 5 minutes, and not have died through something cheap as fuck. So you don't want to have like a bear on the other side of the door, or in this case, lightning bolts that may accidentally hit the player and whittle down their health until they die. So, something you always want to be conscious of. There needs to be a challenge in the level, obviously, but you want to make sure that it's fair. The player can usually see it coming, or at least has some time to prepare for it if it is some kind of ambush. So let's modify the paths of these lightning bolts, and we want to sufficiently hide these trap shooters. Now in order to do this, I can't see shit, so let's move this. Let's just create another light source. Alright, that's good enough. And we're going to move these on the axes. Instead of moving them around in space, we move them by exact. You just snap them to a plane. That way you're making sure that you're not moving them out of path of where you want the lightning bolt to go. So there's going to be a lot more of these. Oops, that one moved it too far that way. That one's moving it that way. That one moves it back. Let's move this one up a little bit. And it is pretty weird to manipulate these things so that they work correctly, but they're not too visible to the player. Because it is kind of tacky to have these little nubs sticking out of a wall, shooting whatever you need them to shoot, just as a visual effect. But there are ways to mask it. I tried for a while to make these things not have a model, but then that takes away its ability to have a path or do anything at all. And that was a whole hell of a fix to do, because I accidentally deleted the model of every single one of these in the game in my file, so I had to rebuild that out of the file. I had to extract it from the game and put it back in the plugin. It was a big pain in the ass. Learned a lot though. So anyway, this thing is shooting in the path I wanted to. It's straightforward and hitting that pillar, almost like it's conducting from something. But it doesn't work too well coming from this top of this thing here, because if I move it any farther up, it's going to clip through the top here and the bolt will not fire. So I need to move it farther back instead. See, it worked better when it was on this slope right here between 2 pillars, because they both had a believable area where they were originating from. For this, it's a little weirder because it's going from a straight path down to a diagonal path, which is okay. It'll be alright. It's just The diagonal paths need to be farther up the hallway, I think. And it needs to be angled down a little bit more, I believe. So let's angle it down, move this up, and then move it in a little bit so it's masked. Can't see it too well, but the tip of it is still jutting out and it should still fire. Alright. Thing is, it's still a little visible, but that's what fog is for. We're going to change the fog. We're going to add some mist to kind of cover it up and make it so the player is focusing on the lightning and not the original, the points of origination. Like if we turn the light off, you can't see jack shit. You can't see that thing. But then, actually, you still will be able to see the lightning bolts. The lightning bolts don't create a light source, but they're lit up by themselves enough that you should still be able to see them. So, for the purposes of working with this and setting up the traps correctly, I'll keep the light here. But then we're going to delete this light and let it just be darkness. Darkness. Because you got a light source right here. You're going to open the door. You're going to see this darkness. Maybe this light be in the distance here. Make it a little dimmer. But you want to have darkness, and then you go through, and then boom, there's lightning everywhere. Looks threatening, but you continue onward, and it dissipates. That's the arc that the player is going to go through for this tiny ass little hallway. Hallways are important. Whoops. So let's bring that back. And we're just going to do one side, and then I'll take a look at what it looks like in game. And then that'll be the stopping point, I think. So we have another point of origin from the pillar itself. That's okay. The path ends right here, but you can kind of eyeball where it's going to go. It's angled up very slightly, so it's going to hit right here about. This is path correctly, so it's going to hit right there. Let's move this in a bit. This is going to land right there. You just have to visualize in your mind's eye what it's going to look like when these things are all firing at the same time. You want to add some variety, so let's copy this. And we'll angle it up a little bit. Oops. So it kind of just hits the ceiling. We'll move it down a little bit. Because there's going to be long bolts and short bolts. They look different. In this room, because the bolts of lightning are going across such huge distances, the way the projectile looks is instead of it being a snaking, arcing lightning bolt, it's very straight. And it doesn't look great. It looks okay for the purpose it's filling. But when lightning bolts go between shorter distances, like between these two pillars or between these two walls, they actually look a lot better, I think. And the closer the lightning bolt is between the impact point and the point of origin, the more erratic the lightning bolt looks. And there's some variety there. So you want to have some bolts that hit right away. Like this right here is going to just smack right into the wall 10 feet away. And this bolt is going to go all the way across to the pillar. And it's going to stretch a little bit more. It'll look different. And it does look better, I think. You always want to have some variety when you're working with these effects. Same theme, same objects, but just utilize it a little differently. So let's angle this one up, place it down lower, make sure that it's actually sticking out, turn off the lighting, make sure it's sticking out enough so that the bolt will actually fire. If you have it too far into the wall, like this, the bolt impact point will be this section of geometry and it won't fire correctly. See how ugly this fucking game is when you turn off the normal map, the bump mapping, everything. You turn it back on, it's pretty, beautiful given its age. You turn that off just so you can see a little better, and holy shit, N64. Oh man, that's what I like about this game. Working with the creation kit has taught me a lot. Alright, so let's add some these bolts are all going kind of across. Let's add some that are going in a V shape, or, more vertical at least. Let's add a point of origin right here. Make sure it's roughly along the same plane. Doesn't have to be exact. And then we're going to rotate that all the way down to the ground. Add another point of origin on that ground. Rotate it. So it's going this way. We need to hide this a little better. There we go. This may not fire because it's slightly in the geometry, but we'll see. Let's add another one of these right there. Make sure it's lined up properly. Angle it so it's just hitting the floor. Okay, so we have this nice web of lightning. And let's make sure that they're actually going to fire correctly. So let's take one of these, and if this works well, they all will work well, because they're just copy pasting. Let's look at the script. You can use scripts in Skyrim, and it'll still be mostly working and available on the Xbox DLC, whatever. As long as it's a default script that comes with the game. You can't write your own scripts anymore, as far as I'm aware. So the firing rate is about 3 times as fast, just so it looks like a rapidly firing bolt. The spell to cast is 3 lightning bolt. Okay, so we have the correct spell. Now we just need to activate these. I believe I already have the activate script set up. Right. I can get through all this crap. Hang on. Turn that off. Let's see, that's the script that disables the lighting. I have a lot of scripts in here, a lot of trigger boxes in here that activate scripts to turn off lights that are no longer needed because they're such a resource hog. I use a lot of shadow lights just because I think they make a scene look way better than just flat lighting. So in order to use those and get away with it, I have to turn them off after the player gets too far away. So here's my trigger box for activating all the effects in this area, because I don't want them all going off all the time, because I think that they cause issues with texture flickering and sound as well. Just things that are happening off in the distance tend to just be buggy. So I only want them to be relevant when the player gets pretty close to them. So let's copy this trigger box. We'll copy the trap linker I have set up for it too. Trap linkers allow you to have a trigger box that activates, well, multiple traps. So slap that shit right there. And we're going to make sure this intersects correctly. It's a little wonky. It's not straight at all, but, it works. Okay, so we got the trap linker right here. It's not connected to anything. We're going to make... Okay, let's take a look at the script. It's an enable, disable, linked ref script. So when the player passes through the red box, the box activates itself. And when the box is activated, it enables its linked reference. So it enables through this trap linker all the things that are attached to the trap linker. And how you do that is we're going to disable the box so we can see clearly. We're going to select every single one of these traps. I hit one periodically to make sure that I have the correct thing selected and not accidentally selecting a wall. That'd be a little awkward if a wall just pops in. Okay, I think I've got everything. And then we're going to hit tilde. Bring up this reference batch action so you can take one action on all these things at the same time instead of just going through each one and setting them manually. Let's set an activated delay from 1 second to 2 seconds. Just to make sure that these lightning bolts are turning on at different points. It's not just a big wave of lightning that's just turning on, then off, then on again all at the same time. Looks like crap. Link them all to the trap linker and boom. Okay. So before I get in game, I want to go back to what I did before and make sure that's set up in the same way, because I know that this for sure works. And after you, making a level so complicated at some points, you get busy doing one project, like in this case, setting up the lightning in this room, and then you do a whole bunch of other stuff on subsequent days, and you come back to this and you kind of forget exactly how you did things. And there's so much trial and error involved that you can forget what works and what didn't. So we have some mist selected. Oh, that's nice. Thanks, mist. The mist always gets in the way, man. Okay, so the linked reference is... Oh, it's this right here. Okay. Activate parents is a trigger box. Pardon me while I figure out what I did that worked. Okay. So this was the activate parent. Got it. Sometimes I mix up what should be an activate parent and what should be a just enable linked reference. So we're going to make this trap linker be activated by stepping through the trigger box. And then that should work. There we go. Doesn't necessarily need to be a linked reference, just needs to be the activate parent. Okay, so let's test it out. Let's move the start point all the way up here. Whoops, that's too far below. Still too far. There we go. Alright. Let's test this out. Hopefully it's not just going to be a black screen. I apologize if this is like 2 frames a second, because I'm pretty sure I haven't set up my broadcasting software to handle this correctly. So let me make sure that you can actually see what I'm seeing. And then I'll get back into game once I make sure the game is running on stream. Just a moment. Yeah, man, it tanks my frame rate. It's total shit. Okay, but it does work. And you should be able to at least see the effect working. And there we go. Looks pretty rad as fuck. In all of its 2 frame rate glory. See, it looks amazing on my end. Looks awesome. But from your end, unfortunately, it probably looks like turd. So, yeah, that'll hurt if you go in there. Maybe I should intentionally make these bolts do like 100 damage per strike, just to make them actually hurt. But yeah, this is exactly what I'm going for. Player's perspective, you walk in, lightning on either side, and then you move forward. The lightning dissipates, maybe conducts between these pillars a little bit, just a few arcing bolts. Then you turn the corner, the lights change, and the physics breaks in a way that I don't want it to. And that signals the transition between lightning and, well, not lightning. So let's crash the game real quick. And here we are. All right. So I always like to make a visual effect look like a complete entity, like make it look like it makes sense. So on a smaller scale of this room, how it looks like a storm above you, like a storm coming through the mountains, or mountains coming through the storm. You get the idea. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this long mist, drag it over here, turn the markers on so I can see the damn thing, and I'm going to cover the top of the room with it so it looks like a small storm above you. And I forgot to turn off the light, so it's going to look even cooler. But anyway, let's change the emittance to... Okay, it's already at none. I just want it to be a base gray color, like a dark sky. And then we're going to need another one that we're going to tilt slightly to match this part of the room. Going to make sure it doesn't jut too far down. And then we're going to add another one. This one doesn't need to be a long one, though. We can change it to circle, and that'll be the corner. Things always change position when you paste, so you gotta examine it from all angles, make sure it works. Okay, so it looks a little weird from this angle, but from the player's perspective, you walk in, there's mist above you, the mist follows you going down, and then there's still mist above you at this turn right here. So that works. Might change the texture of it though, just because this cloudiness may not work on smaller scale. It looks cool right here because these big objects are jutting through it, and there's a light source right underneath it, right here, that happens to be really damn bright. So it illuminates it in a way that makes it look cool, and it's huge. It's really enlarged. So if you get really close to it, like each 2D like particle of this is like gigantic, but you're so far away from it that it looks okay. It looks believable, like a flowing swirling cloud matrix. So we want to achieve that, but on a smaller scale right here. Might have to choose a different texture. So let's see how it looks with low smoky. Nope, I changed it to the circular one. Okay, here's the long one. This one looks a little bit better. It looks like clouds rising up. In fact, there we go. Now I can see it. Yeah, it looks pretty nifty. Let's change the other one to that as well. And we'll make sure it's low enough that you can actually see it. I think that's part of my problem, is a little too high. Change it to low smoky. Oops, need to make sure it's the long one so it stretches on enough. And then we'll do the same thing right here. And again, it needs to be a little bit lower. Okay, turn off the markers to get a better idea of what it looks like. And yeah, it looks pretty cool. It gets brighter because there's a light source right here. I don't know how I feel about that. We can change the emittance maybe and see if it helps it line up more with what the other ones look like. So this is a Dwarven Omni light, so let's find another Dwarven Omni. There we go. That works perfectly. It changes the color of the particle to match what the light is. Instead of making it stick out like a sore thumb, it helps bring it in line with the surrounding color. So that works. In fact, it works so well that it makes the rest of this look a little weird. But I don't want to change the emittance of the whole thing, because in this area where it looks dark, it may look too colored. But let's try it and see what it looks like. Turn it into a Dwarven Omni. And yeah, it looks a little weird how the smoke turns from an ashen gray color to like this greenish, because the lighting is greenish. So I'm going to change it back because I can handle it looking a little strange right here. But from this angle, it doesn't look bad at all. Looks like a melding of those two colors, which is kind of what we're going for anyway. Transition. So that looks alright. That's how smoke is done. And the smoke kind of helps to hide the little nubs that are everywhere. Takes the focus off the wall texture, puts it more on what's above you. So it looks kind of cool. One thing that's neat that we can do is to take attention off the ceiling and draw the player's eye from up going in a downward direction, is you can just flip it over. So let's turn on snapping to make it a little easier. Turn the markers on and find the right rotational axis and flip it over. You see the smoke. Hang on, let's turn this off. Smoke is now misting downward. So it looks kind of cool. I think I did that in the fire room I put way back there just because I wanted the smoke to be a believable physical entity that's swirling and coalescing and collecting on the ceiling and then moving down. Something that has volume, even though it really doesn't have volume. So, but for the purposes of this, I might keep it like this because this moving down and then it moving up like this, kind of it reinforces motion, and that's helpful when you're going between two areas because the environment changes with the player as they move down and the colors change. So that I might keep like that. Variety is good. So with that, let's do one last test and then that'll be the end of the stream. So let's delete this light and then go back into game. And we're going to see these concepts that I've combined. The changing colors, the direction of the fog, the lightning bolt effect, and the removal of the light source. And see what kind of emotion they portray. It should be danger, unpredictable, erratic, and just kind of scary. So let's turn this on. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Looks like there's just a storm brewing. In fact, this gives me an idea to take the fog and move it to the walls to kind of obfuscate the origin points and make it harder to tell where the lightning is coming from. But overall, looks pretty damn cool. And you move down, and I can't really see the point at which the fog turns from ash and gray to this lighter greenish color. It looks like a decent transition. Looks better than when I turned the diagonal fog to all greenish. And then looking back, you can see the ash and gray, and the lightning still happening. And it's from this opposite direction, it still looks good. Maybe this is a bit too bright, but I can tone down the light source or move it closer to the floor so it's not affecting the fog so much. But yeah. Oh, we have a comment from Hoi Hoi. I'd love to read this right now. Hoi Hoi says, actually I'm not going to read it, just in case I decide to come back to this. Because I'm new to this streaming thing, so I don't know how my commentary is. It's probably fucking mindless rambling. My tone, my voice doesn't sound great anyway. Like, I just don't have a speaker's voice. But just like I take notes and do concept art and stuff, it's good to go back and see what I've done. And I don't want to go back and read all of hump me, fuck me, daddy. That whole paragraph. I gotta say though, man, like, none of that is interesting at all. Like, you bust out the thesaurus, man. Go big or go home. There's nothing descriptive in there. Like, I've seen like porn video descriptions that are better than what you just wrote. That's saying something. You should feel ashamed for yourself If you want to troll someone in the chat for a stream with 4 viewers, fucking try harder, man. Anyway, that's what I've done for tonight. Stream was about an hour and 20 minutes long, so I'm tired. Gotta get up, so hopefully you learned something. Maybe some part of this was interesting. Thanks for viewing. And yeah, it's always interesting to me to see like what things are better to talk about and show, and what things are better to just trial and error to death until I finally get it working. I think this tunnel is going to be one of those things. But yeah, I wish I could just, from start to finish, build this on stream in like an hour, but it just doesn't work like that, you know? I gotta wait to stream until I find something decent to talk about that doesn't fucking put you to sleep and has a result that looks neat that you can take something away from, even if you're not that interested in like level design or game design, even Skyrim. It has to be something somewhat interesting at some level. So I hope I got closer to accomplishing that goal. Maybe one day I'll have a proper stream where I can go over examples that I've carefully put together. That's an idea. But for now, that's all. Thanks for viewing, and have a lovely night.